dream remains alive for the Houston Cougars. A furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
Here is Zion Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zion Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to Scout Home Podcast, back off another Cougar football victory, a game that we really didn't want to lose. Excited to see the Cougar football program hold the Bayou Bucket for the foreseeable future. We're going to talk about everything from Saturday night's game against Rice, as well as a Friday ESPN tilt opening Big 12 play against the Colorado Buffaloes. Plenty to talk about there. We even brought on a guest to give us a better idea of what that program has. We have multiple other sports as well, with I think mostly really good weeks to talk about: volleyball and soccer, your other two fall sports. And we might even take a little trip to the links here by the end of this episode. Bobby, I am currently, as you well know, I'm repeating something that we have talked about in depth off air, but I am dealing with a plumbing problem, which anyone who is a homeowner, past or present on this podcast who's dealt with immediately just probably feels a little pain in the side of their temple about that one that's keeping me from going to this game. But I want to say this all to thank you for allowing me something in my life that I look forward to on a weekly basis to talk about the Houston Cougars and the week that was and will be with you, a merciful distraction from the things that are less pleasant about adulthood. How you doing, friend?
Hey, bud, I will gladly talk Cougar sports with you. You know, I had a rough year last year, so yeah, I can relate to just needing that Tuesday night distraction. But all in all, everything's good here. Actually getting ready to go to Texarkana on Thursday. So, you know, sometimes when you hear travel for work, everyone thinks that it's this glamorous thing. And then sometimes you go to Texarkana.
I'm just imagining you doing like telling someone, yeah, I'm going to Paris for work, and just letting them believe it's like,
I've done it
Paris, Paris. And then it's like, no, buddy. It's Paris, Texas. It's not Paris, Paris.
I have multiple pictures in front of the little Eiffel in Paris, Texas from when I had to go there for work.
I don't doubt that at all. Are you going to the Texas side or the Arkansas side?
It will be the Texas side. The stores that I'm visiting are on the Texas side, I believe.
Nice. Home to one of my favorite random quarterbacks of all time. One of yours too. R.I.P. Ryan Mallett here. I did not think I'd be mentioning in this Houston Cougar podcast intro, but gonna steer us on track here. Mention very quickly something I don't always do at the top, but really quickly. You probably, if you listen to a few podcasts, hear hosts say this. Please, if you haven't done so already on your podcast app of choice, give us a 5-star review. There's a reason why all the various podcasts you listen to ask you to do that. It genuinely does help, and it takes very little time to do, and it is free, and it genuinely helps Bobby and I's weekly talk about the Houston Cougars get discovered a little bit better on the various podcast platforms. So please give us a 5-star review if you have not done so already. And also, if you would like to support the work that we do, as I always say at the top, please go to patreon.com/shpodcast, SHPAWDcast, if you want to support the work that Bobby and I do and get access to, in addition to our summer full of, I think, still fairly current off-season premium episodes, our weekly Cougar football reacts that we release shortly after each football game. I think Bobby and I did good ones. You might have seen on the feed, I released a little snippet of our Rice one. Have enjoyed doing both of those immensely. Have enjoyed, as much as the last two seasons haven't given us as many wins as we would have liked going to this one, have still enjoyed coming on with you or just talking to myself on a microphone about the Houston Cougar football game that's happened. So again, if any of that sounds good to you, if the thought of supporting the work that the two of us do as the internet's longest running independent Houston Cougar podcast sounds good to you, please go to patreon.com/shpodcast. All right, enough housekeeping, enough chit chat about various Northeast Texas hamlets. Bobby, ready to talk a little Bayou Bucket?
Can't wait.
Second straight week of defensive dominance in this 35-9 win by your Houston Cougar football team over the Rice Owls in what is currently the last scheduled Bayou Bucket game. The kind of defensive performance where, quite frankly, you'd struggle to find any obvious negative, even acknowledging the strength of your specific opponent here. Offense maybe didn't turn in a performance without negatives, namely a first half where The Cougs largely went nowhere on that side of the ball and didn't score until the very end. But I think taken as a 4-quarter performance, still a noticeable improvement on what you did against SFA in week 1, and with improvements in areas where I think you specifically wanted to see improvements, which we will of course dive into later. Most importantly, I would say this was a game I felt pretty confident in after that first Dean Connors touchdown run, even just up 7-3. At that point, I was like, okay, we really aren't going to lose this game, as much as a 7-3 lead is hardly insurmountable. But as always, we're going to start with our overlooked play of the game. Bobby, any big picture thoughts before we get into this? And whenever you're done with that, please give us your pick for overlooked play from Saturday night's win over the Owls.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest kind of overreaching thought is how good this defense is. I said that on the Instant React show. This defense is really good, and it's something that we've won that I don't think we expected it to be this good this early. I think if we're being honest with one another, we thought it would be a bit of a step back from last year, and it very well still could be, but you're still pretty confident in this defense. So kind of my far overreaching view was just how good of a defensive performance this was. And my overlooked play is actually a defensive play. My first thought was to check either that first Rice scoring drive where they got the field goal, or one of our scoring drives. Those are kind of where the things would kind of turn, or maybe there was a big 4th down stop somewhere along the way. Either way, I went with a defensive play, the final 2nd down of the Rice field goal drive. And you just laughed at that, so I think it's very funny that there's a good chance that we chose the exact same play.
Very good chance, but finish your thought on it, because
Rice was clearly running the ball effectively. Lots of 5-yard pickups on that drive. As you watch, it was just like 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards. They pick up 2 yards on 1st down. That puts them in a 2nd and 8. You know, if you give up 5 there, you give up 4 there. It puts you in a really tough spot. Their playbook is pretty open at that point. You actually you give up 1 yard. That puts them in a 3rd and 7. At that point, they could still pass. They actually passed earlier on that drive. But really, picking up 7 on the ground at that point is damn near impossible from what we saw with a lot of the Rice runs. You're thinking if you're Rice there on that 3rd and 7, if we can even go and pick up 5 or 6, we may even go for it. They don't. They end up losing 5. But if it's not 3rd and 7, I don't think you can tell your guys to kind of pin their ears back, go get the quarterback, and you're able to get the stop, get off the field, in on a drive in which it looked like Rice was just kind of moving the ball easy on you pretty well. I think anywhere from that 1st, 2nd, or 3rd down is a great place to look. That final 1st, 2nd, 3rd down that Rice had. I went with the 2nd down because, again, there's a good chance that it could become a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, something like that. And then you're running the ball again there. So, Sam, based on your reaction, what was yours, though?
It was that exact one. And I guess the good thing is this is the 14th time we've done this, because we did it for all 12 regular season games last year, and then the 2 for I think it was last year we did, right? Did we do it the season?
Yeah. No.
That was Dustin, you and me? Okay, no, it's just the 2 of us. And this is the first time we've had the exact same pick. That was my pick as well. Don't have a ton new to add. We'll say not an overlooked play, but give Will James his flowers for a nice play on 3rd and long, bringing down Rice receiver Drayden Dickman for a loss, truly forcing Rice to settle for the field goal. But my pick was the play on 2nd and 8 where Carlos Allen and Rook Brown stopped Quentin Jackson for 1-yard gain. Pretty much the same reasons that you said. Stuffing Rice in that play sets up a 3rd and long situation that just clearly Rice's specific option offense was a lot less comfortable in than if you were at 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 3 to go, kind of like you said. And this play also kind of symbolized the joint effort you got from your defensive line, in this case, Carlos Allen, and those guys winning frequently at the point of attack against Rice, and then your defensive backs also being a vital part, contributing against the run like Rook Brown did here. I mean, just about every series they were on the field, the defense was eventually able to get Rice off schedule. But I mean, if you don't do it in this possession, not saying Rice being up 7-0 would have been an insurmountable lead, but you would have been giving them real momentum and belief, which even after the field goal, as much as the ESPN crew tried to talk, oh yeah, Rice is having a really good start. And I was kind of thinking to myself, I mean, like, yeah, they have a scoring drive here, but I don't know, buddy. Like, they're only doing marginally better than our offense through a quarter and a half or whatever. But you would have really been giving them belief at that point, and not saying it changed the game necessarily, but it could have been an inflection point. Glad it wasn't. Glad it ended up being just a field goal and not something that ever really got them back in this game in any meaningful way. Very funny that we ended up picking the same one. Something, great minds think alike, I guess.
Yeah, man. Like I said, I was trying to decide between a couple of plays, but like you said, if they go down, they score a touchdown there. With the way your offense was looking, do I think this game is church at that point? No, but I'm definitely going crap. I'd like to see a little bit more out of the offense here. And I think you said this on the instant react. That drive really felt more like how indicative it was of the offense not playing very well and struggling a little bit there. So yeah, I would definitely go with that play like I did.
We've already been talking about this defensive effort. Can't lead the broader talk about the game by talking about anything but what was yet another fantastic defensive effort. It took almost 111 minutes of football to be played this season before this Cougar defense finally surrendered a touchdown. Much as these two opponents weren't the strongest by any stretch, that's an incredible start to the year, man. Like 9 points in 8 quarters, really, again, regardless of the competition. Like, that's a great start. You saw this team play crisp assignment football. The Owls had 7 different possessions, excluding the one where they just took a knee at the end of the second quarter, where they didn't even manage to get a single first down on Saturday night. The tackling was good at all levels. A performance that checked basically any box you would want checked. Bobby, what were your biggest takeaways from this defensive performance?
Yeah, man, you said it all right there. I think the thing that summed up how I felt the most and how I'm feeling so far about this defense was the Rice coach saying in the first half they came out in a defense we didn't really prep for. If you're tricking guys and they don't know exactly what to expect from you, and you're able to be successful in looks that you don't have on tape, we talked about it, right? Things kind of looked vanilla in that first game, and in game 2 you came out in something that they hadn't seen before, and they weren't able to adjust to it. And I kind of went back and I tried to look at it. It didn't look anything too complicated or messy. It just seemed really effective defense by the Cougs. Heading into the week, we said we needed 2 things out of the Cougar defense, right? If you're going to be successful against an option team, you got to do 2 things. One, you got to stick to your assignment. There were no easy pitches. There were no easy reads or anything like that where there was a clear blown assignment on the defense. So you saw that, check that box. And then you said you got to make tackles on first contact. I don't recall too many broken tackles, Sam. I could be crazy, but the DBs were stepping up and laying the wood on people, and making the tackles that they needed to. There were very few broken tackles, very few big plays. I think their longest run was a 17-yarder. Against an option team, it's very common to see a run break off for 25-30 before a guy's even touched, or he gets hit and he's able to get into some space because everyone's sticking with their assignment. So yeah, super excited by that. I think the first player I would call out, and probably the only one I will, because Sam, you usually do a really good job of identifying guys on the defensive side, was Carlos Allen. Carlos Allen was really good in that first half, and he was good in the second half too. I'm not trying to say that he wasn't there, but in the first half, he really stood out to me.
He set the tone.
Yeah, he's in the backfield quick on a lot of plays. I rewatched the game today. He's in that backfield quickly. It's hard to choose the right option when you're getting tackled behind the line. It's really hard to choose the right option when Carlos Allen is blowing up the play pretty quick. And even if he didn't get the tackle, he was back there disrupting. So Carlos Allen really stood out for me on the defensive side. But yeah, everyone made the tackles that they needed to and did exactly what you need to do to beat a Rice team.
I had that quote in my notes as well. This has been an eerie week for those of us that do this podcast here regularly. Gotta be encouraging as a Cougar fan to hear that quote from Scott Abel. You hear the opposing head coach and also their offensive play caller essentially say that U of H's defense showed them stuff they weren't ready for. And it's almost impossible for first-year defensive coordinator Austin Armstrong to have made a better early impression on me, even if these are 2 opponents we shouldn't have been giving up gaudy point or yards totals too as well. And when it comes to playing an option team, something that's been bouncing around in my head was something you said in our premium react, that a lot of it really is on the players. I mean, obviously, generally it's on the players. A great coach is only as good as the guys out there executing the game plan. But I think that's especially magnified against an option team, to that you have guys, once the game actually starts, playing disciplined assignment football, trusting their teammates, and just committed to not freelancing out there, and trusting the 10 guys around you. And that's all good. Still nice to hear, though, from the opposition pretty directly that scheme-wise, your defensive coaches were showing things that they weren't ready for. I'm going to beat this to death like I did when we talked about the SFA game last week. Good tackling by your defensive backs doesn't paper over really serious flaws, doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a good defense. But we have 2 games now in the books, not of good tackling by your defensive backs, but 2 games of positively excellent defensive back tackling. Simply having guys in your defensive backfield who are able and willing tacklers, like the Cougs really seem to have, really raises the floor so much for like what your defense can be. The first guy I'm going to mention, Latrell McCutcheon, obviously good to lead with Carlos Allen. Carlos Allen had a really, really good game. But I mean, Latrell McCutcheon, a cornerback, leading all players in both solo and total tackles, being a constant presence in run support. But also guys like Will James, Jordan Allen, Kentrell Webb were frequently involved as well. They weren't your only standouts. And obviously, as we've both mentioned now by this point, your defensive front also did a really good job controlling the line of scrimmage. But that controlling the line of scrimmage definitely would have been all for naught if it wasn't accompanied by good tackling and good assignment football by the guys on the perimeter. I think like all great efforts in any sport, it was a team one. And considering this is an opponent who almost entirely runs the ball, and from my memory, only threw one downfield-ish pass in the entire game, you were asking this defense to do something pretty different than they're going to do at any point this season. And they gave you an A+ effort. Reiterating what you said, A+ effort from Carlos Allen on Saturday night. No Rice O-line was able to handle him. We've been excited since pretty much the moment he made it clear during the offseason that he would not be leaving the program like a number of his defensive teammates from last year's defense did. And if anything, these two games, I set the bar absurdly high for the rest of the season. I know like 9 tackles or whatever it was is probably going to be the high watermark this year just because of what Carlos Allen has asked to do his position. But it was nice when he was asked to fill a much larger role than he might most weeks, that he was more than ready for it. I would think guys like him are excited to play like an option offense, excited to get a lot of runs their way. Not that other teams aren't doing between the tackle stuff, but like obviously you're getting a heavier dose of it from this kind of offense than most anyone you'll see this year.
Yeah, like you said, it's got to be fun for those interior linemen when they know a guy's team's going to be running it a ton. So yeah, I think it's a super great defensive performance from this team.
I believe I mentioned Eddie Walls III after the SFA game as a guy who the box score might not have shown as doing a lot in that one, but was very involved and had a good game there and was fantastic on Saturday night. Had a sack, team high, 3 tackles for loss. I would say no other individual Cougar player got the Owls offense off schedule more often than Walls. Giving myself just a little pat on the back for that one. And we haven't talked about the linebackers much, but that's not for lack of them being very good. Jalen Garner continues to look more than ready for being one of the leaders in this defense. And his first 2 games as a Coug, also Utah transfer Sione Fotu has been a consistent positive contributor. I saw to the defensive line a little bit. I saw Willie Fritz today in his media availability talking about Khalil Lafau and how good he's been, the Wazoo transfer. And the stories don't get a lot more feel good than Corey Platt Jr. finally coming back after missing basically 2 full seasons, making his Cougar debut finally against Rice, and then getting the sack of Chase Jenkins on Rice's final possession. That was a really cool moment.
Yeah, man. Another cool thing, just shout out Ryan over at Go Cougs. I got a canvas print of Corey Platt's sack celebration and gave it to him. I don't know if he did it or where Corey got it, but a really kind of cool thing just to kind of see on social media today. Or yesterday,
yeah, definitely.
Sorry.
Do we have any other defensive thoughts from this Rice game?
No, man. I'm ready to move on to the offense.
Yeah, me too. So once again, second week in a row, not as much of a past with flying colors night from your offense. But I would say, flip side of that, if you're a Cougar fan and also don't see positives here, then I don't think you're being fair to this group. I think you're seeing what you want to see versus what we actually saw for 4 quarters, which wasn't by any stretch 4 quarters of offensive excellence, but the offense did show you positive things. And I feel like we've been unrelentingly positive. That's for good reason, because we've talked about defensive performance that I don't think has any obvious negatives from it. Bobby, can I lead with a negative, at least in terms of a negative specific to this offensive performance? That I think you're going to be with me on this.
Yeah, go ahead, bud.
Now that I've rewatched it and had a couple days to marinate, obviously first half offensive effort was as bad as we remembered it. No sugarcoating that. I would say broadly the offensive performance has aged a bit better for me between Saturday and tonight, which is kind of like why I enjoy doing both an immediate react and our regular episode a couple days later, because your thoughts kind of marinate and you feel differently from the night of the game to you actually sit down, cold light of day, and really think about it. I think what is actually worse than I remember is the fact that you really weren't able to get your wide receivers involved in the pass game. Really weren't able to get your backs involved in the pass game. Your pass game was essentially a lot of short to mid-range to Tanner Koziol, one absolutely spectacular bomb to Stephon Johnson, and that's basically it, man. Like that's and the fact that you weren't able to get him involved against an opponent who's probably going to be worse on defense than most or all of your Big 12 opponents isn't great. It's the biggest thing I think the staff and the players have to work on. It's impossible. We don't have the all 22 for us to truly conclusively say, is this a scheme problem? Is this simply your receivers not getting open? Is this Connor Wigman's fault? Anything like that. And it's never, or almost never, one thing usually. It's some kind of, maybe one thing is the most responsible, but there's factors of all the other things that I just mentioned there. And I would say if this doesn't improve at least somewhat this week, I mean, Bobby, Colorado leaves here with the W if this doesn't get at least somewhat better on Friday. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, man. I think I said it to you during the game is who is this on, right? Like last year was all pretty obvious that it was an offensive line problem. But yeah, if you can't get some more receivers not named Tanner Koziol involved with, he had over half of our receptions, man. That's your tight end. We knew he was going to play a large role in the offense. I don't think we thought no receivers were going to be out there. I mean, your tight ends had 11 receptions, I believe, on the day, and there were only 15 receptions. That's a little troubling.
Yeah. So what were your big takeaways from this offensive performance? Good, bad, and indifferent.
Yeah. So, this offense is so weird because, like, it doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look good either. And it's just kind of a weird situation to be in because you want to point to one thing. Last year, I was able to point to the offensive line in those first couple of games and just go, look how terrible that is. But then you kind of watch the game a little bit and you're like, that offensive line's not that bad. Is Wigman not seeing receivers, or the receivers not getting open? It's easy to see those 3 sacks. Like I said, you see 3 sacks and you go, 3 sacks. He didn't have any time to throw the ball. But Sam, I sent this to you earlier. I'm going to break down the 3 sacks that I saw just real quick. First one, first drive of the game. Connor has a great pocket, a clean pocket. At about 3 seconds post snap, there's this thing that you often hear coaches and quarterbacks talk about is this timer. You have 1, 2, 3 to get the ball out. If the ball's not out, someone's about to hit you. And so he does that timer kind of goes off in his head. There's no real pressure. One guy is like kind of falling at his feet a little bit. Not going to get there. He backs out. He cuts the corner. And the linebacker in zone steps up and brings him down. Connor does appear to miss a wide open Tanner Koziol in the flat that he probably could have dumped it off to and picked up 3 or 4. It all was kind of bang, bang. So maybe there was a guy behind Koziol. We didn't see it on the all 22. maybe if I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, you'd like to see him dump it off there. But that sack, not on the O-line. Second sack is another perfect pocket. You can't ask for much more from your offensive line than what you got there. Connor goes to step up. He kind of slips a little bit. That turf was a little slick. I don't know if you noticed that, Sam. And they actually mentioned it on the broadcast. But turf, brand new, little slick from the rain. Slips on the wet turf a little bit. Doesn't go down, but definitely stumbles. It stops him from stepping up in the pocket as cleanly as he maybe wanted to. As soon as he steps up, they have a spy on him. Spy steps in, takes Connor down. O-lineman, can't blame them there either, right? It's a scramble drill. A guy is in a quarterback spy. He makes a play. Third sack, another 3 seconds to throw with almost zero pressure. There's very little pressure here. That quarterback timer goes off again, flushes out. Spy steps up again, hits him, slows him down, and the Owls swarm, bring him down for, I want to say, like a 1 yard sack. So that's 3 sacks. And I would say that none of them were the O-line's fault. Maybe you could say the first one, maybe, because the guy was kind of diving at Connor's feet.
At most 1 of 3, I think, is the most charitable assessment to the people's sides O-line, yeah.
You know, but one of the good things that I will say about Connor versus other quarterbacks we had last year, maybe Zion makes a few more plays outside of the pocket. But one of the things that Connor does a really good job of is if he's going to take a sack, it's only for like a yard, right? Like you very rarely see him take a sack and it's like a 7-yard loss. He does a good job of getting out there and trying his hardest to get to the line of scrimmage. I know that's a very weird thing to kind of compliment a guy on, but if you're going to take the sack, don't lose 5, lose 1. Okay, cool. So yeah, I just don't know. Like it seems like the line's holding up pretty well. Like, again, you kind of look at the stats, but stats versus tape is a little different. The question, like I said, is, are we not seeing receivers get open? Are we just not getting separation? Or are we not getting this, or is Connor not seeing guys open? I wish I had access to the all-22, which, funny enough, Sam, I did find a Patreon that does all-22s of colleges. What do you think it costs a month to get access to that?
Ooh. The fact that you haven't reached out to me and said, hey man, it's like, it's X dollars to do this tells me it's something on, $65.
$850.
You know, yeah, I assumed if this was like a $25-$30 a month thing, like, yeah, like, hey man, let's split this. And, you know, like obviously we can swing that. Man,
we do not have nearly enough Patreon supporters, which SH Podcast,
patreon.com/SH Podcast. If you want to if you have $10,000 a month that you just like are burning a hole in your pocket and you really want to see us have access to this all 22.
So yeah, that was kind of
$100 a month. Sorry. Wow.
So yeah, because I was like, ooh, I wonder how much that is, and it said $850 a month. I'm like, you're high, like you are so high.
But you gotta think maybe someone's paying it, but like I don't know. That's oh man.
So yeah, I don't know who it is, what the problem is. I know there's a problem, but I don't have $850 a month to figure out which one's the problem.
Yeah. I will start with the offensive line. And I wasn't slamming the panic button after week 1 when it came to this group. And reiterate, week 1, nor this past week 2, was all-time greatness. But to me, week 2 was a step forward from week 1. Everything the offensive line did looked at least somewhat better. In some cases, a lot better. Connor Wigman had clean pockets. You sent me some stills from your rewatch earlier. I remember last year when you'd send me those, it would be 3 to 5 opposing defenders around our quarterback and like one of our offensive linemen facing the wrong way, or they've fallen and they can't get up like a turtle, like on their back or something like that. It would be just like, it would be tragic comic kind of stuff when it came to our offensive line. And every still you sent me of the sacks you just described, like you can look at it and even as a semi-educated football fan, just be like, looks like a pretty clean pocket. It just the kind of pocket that last year's offensive line wasn't creating for the various quarterbacks here with any kind of regularity. Wigman had more clean pockets or times where I thought to myself watching live after the play was done, he had some time to throw it there. And ditto for the run blocking, not perfect in this one, but would say the run blocking we saw against Rice was an improvement over what we saw against SFA. And when I prepped for us previewing Rice, watching Rice's defensive front, which returned some key guys from a pretty good defense last year, watching them dominate their week one opponent, ooh la la, I didn't take it as a given that we were going to have over 200 yards rushing, multiple long, and at least one case game-changing touchdown runs, and be able to actually periodically, if not super consistently, run the ball against his opponent. I would still like to see it happen against better competition to really get me to start believing, but expecting an enormous week 1 to week 2 jump isn't realistic. Again, when you have 4 of your 5 starters only having played for this program for 2 games and the whole unit only having played together for 2 games. Like you said, the box score tells you Rice had 3 sacks, but we're both very much in agreement that that has more to do with the inability of pass plays to develop, or in that one case, Wigman losing his footing, than bad blocking or bad pass protection. I believe after week 1, Willie Fritz gave the O-line a C grade in his post-game press conference. I kind of agreed. And I would give them a B, or maybe if you're a really tough grader, a B- for the week 2 performance, against Rice. Not perfect, but I think a conclusive improvement. Can't say enough good things about Dean Connors. He had some really great north-south runs on Saturday night. Just looks like a guy who's played a lot of college football and can find those spaces in opposing defenses when he gets a little bit of daylight. He's not the only running back who's going to get a good amount of carries this season. This is going to be some amount of a run-first offense, and you have too many promising running backs not to give multiple guys at least a good amount of touches, but Dean Connors sure is starting to look like the favorite to be that bell cow running back that Willie Fritz seems to be looking for in this offense. Yeah.
Yeah, he said he wanted one, and Dean Connors, you can just tell, is getting a few more carries, more and more carries. I think injuries are certainly playing a role in that as well. But yeah, Dean Connors has looked really good in both games.
Wanted to also mention Willie Fritz shouted this out, I think, on his halftime comments to the sideline reporter, but on that 54-yard Dean Connors touchdown run at the end of the second quarter, that redshirt freshman Kobe Young apparently threw a critical block that allowed Connors to make that extremely important first half house call. Also, don't let Stacey Snead's performance on Saturday get overlooked. He had a solid week 1 showing against SFA. In this one, 10 touches for 50 yards, most of that coming from his 9 carries for 36 rushing yards. 5 yards a touch is a nice game's work, and I hope the contributions for Snead don't decrease as the opponents get tougher, because it's such a cool story. As fans, we all talk a big game about wanting guys come into our program who are willing to stick around, even if they're, maybe not the first guy in the depth chart, but are willing to stick around and fight their way to be the man. And Snead's done that now under multiple coaching staffs, countless different OCs and systems. As much as I'm rooting for every single player in this roster, you can't help but love the guys like Stacey Snead and kind of root for him to become one of your key guys. Also, while we're talking positive stuff, I know it's already come up, I think from both of us, at least in passing. Can't overstate what an amazing connection that 74-yard Wigman to Stephon Johnson touchdown was. He hits him perfectly in stride. I watched that play a few more times. How far do you think that ball travels in the air?
I watched it today. I think it's like 55, maybe.
Maybe revealing ourselves, our public school college grads here. I thought it was 49.
It might be.
But 49.
Mine was a guess. Mine was a guess.
Okay.
I didn't.
I think because it was about the 18 to the 18 to about the 33 on Rice's side.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But almost 50 yards in the air, perfectly in stride. Not being uncharitable to your quarterbacks the last 2 years, just stating a fact here. No chance Donovan Smith or Zion Chris is making that throw. You never saw those guys made a throw this caliber. Yeah.
I sent that to you right away. As I said, we haven't seen that throw the last 2 years. That's not a throw. That's why you bring in Wigman, right? Last year, I will be the guy hand up who said the problem is not the quarterback. Sure, If we're going to get one, cool, but that's not the biggest problem on this team. We need to address the O-line. I didn't think we needed a quarterback necessarily. If you could fix some of the O-line, buddy, that right there is why you go get Connor Wigman.
Exactly. I think you weren't wrong. That wasn't the biggest problem because obviously you need to pretty much overhaul that O-line, but I think we're glad in retrospect that that was a problem the staff addressed.
1,000%.
Not expecting 3 or 4 of those throws per game or anything crazy like that, but even if it only happens once, as we saw on Saturday, that kind of deep ball touchdown and an opponent seeing on film that Wigman can actually do that. And Stephon Johnson Jr., give him credit, man. Like, ran a good route, got himself very much open, was very much in the right spot for that ball. As good of a deep ball as that was, very good route, very good job beating his man one-on-one by Stephon Johnson as well. Just putting that on film, I would say almost opens things up for your offense. They have to respect that you have at least some ability to throw the ball downfield. And I know the last touchdown you had against the SFA game wasn't as crazy a throw, but that one, remind ourselves, he threw that almost 40 yards in the air, like on a dart in the right spot to Amari Thomas. That's 2 not easy degree of difficulty touchdown passes we've seen Wigman do. And I think it can only be a good thing. It can only open things up for your offense.
Absolutely.
So what other remaining Rice thoughts, at least of the on-field variety, you have, Bobby, for us, if any?
Yeah, man, I think the scariest thing is teams are really starting to, when it comes to our wide receivers, is just play them man up and dare you to run the ball on them. You saw a lot of zone from Rice. From me going back watching, they were just like, we're just going to draw back. We're going to be able to blanket your guys pretty easily. So a little scary there, but I think the big test comes this weekend, or it comes Friday.
No doubt. So since this is probably going to be the last time we talk about this opponent or his rivalry game for a good long while, I'll ask you a question we didn't prep for, but also not the kind of question you would have to prep for, if I may, Bobby.
Yep.
Let's say, other than not being able to change the fact that this isn't there isn't a scheduling opening between these teams until 2030. Let's say, besides that, you have the final say on what happens with the Bayou Bucket game. What are you, Bobby, doing with it?
Oh, do I have to include like financial reasons or anything like that, or can I?
No, you can make it as realistic or unrealistic as you want. The only thing you can't change is the fact that it's not going to be back until 2030.
Yeah, I think this game should be played every year. Just when I look at the financials, like, okay, yeah, I guess it's better to bring in a FCS team and not have to, you kind of do a pay game and you get your people in here and get them kind of excited. But I don't know, man. I know our fan base sometimes, and they're not showing up when we play McNeese, right? Or they're not going to show up when we play Incarnate Word. They're more likely to show up if we play Rice, even if Rice is a terrible game. There's still that little bit of juice with it being in the same city. From a financial standpoint, I understand how you don't want to give up a game going there and maybe have a 7th home game, which I totally understand as well. Like, I get it from that financial side, but what makes college football great are things like this, rivalries like this. I would rather watch us play Rice than play Incarnate Word. I'd rather watch us play Rice. And if you're not going to play Rice, I want to see a game with like UTSA, like Rice, Sam Houston, something like that. I love the local flair. It's what makes college football great, is the localness. That's one of the things that we've lost with conference realignment, is the regionality of it. If only there was a conference on the West Coast where Stanford and UCLA and Washington State and Oregon State could play each other. If only that like existed and they didn't have to travel all across. I think this game needs to be played just because it's a fun game for both fan bases. I know Rice doesn't bring a lot of people to our stadium, but are they bringing less than fill in the blank FCS team? I don't know about that.
I mean, I don't know the SFA crowd because I was not physically at the stadium week 1. See, but I would bet good money, not all my money, but I would bet good money that they brought more fans than Rice did on average for the various games they played at our stadiums over the last 15, 20 years. Here's the other
thing I will say about it, though, is that's a huge game for SFA, right? Playing us is a huge game for SFA. it's also a big game for Rice, but Rice does have, they're also FBS, right? Okay, here's one for you: UTSA versus Rice. I venture it might be pretty close.
No chance.
You think UTSA
brings a ton more fans. Like,
that's fair.
I know I wasn't there in 23, so like the 20, but the 2014 was before they were good, and they had a lot of fans for that game that we've tried to block out of our mind.
Yeah, I just always, I don't know. I just think the game should be played. And again, if you're not going to do it, don't schedule an FCS. Give me a fun FBS team that you're going to play.
I think you should probably expect the schedule to generally be FCS team, group of 5. Though I agree with you, I'd like it to be at least some Texas team more years than not, and then kind of like what U of H has this year. You had SFA as the FCS team, which I think has been I think that's the Big 12 schedule's kind of desire for members to do. Like one kind of body bag game is the FCS team, one group of 5 opponent, maybe if possible one with some regional ties, and then one power conference opponent of some degree of difficulty, which for us, Oregon State, not really the toughest.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the future schedule here. That's pretty much what it does. Is Oregon State next year? You go Oregon State Southern. There's your FCS game, and then you go.
I think PV's on one of the future ones too. I think. I could be wrong on that though.
27. 28, I wouldn't be surprised to watch us try and get out of one of these games. Sorry, now I'm
UNLV is one of them, yeah.
In Vegas, sorry, bud. Then you host Oklahoma and then Sam Houston. I wouldn't be surprised if you see us try to get out of that Oklahoma or Sam game.
Listen, man, as much as it would be if I'm still here in 3 years, which I think decent chance of that, much as it would be cool to drive 10 minutes to a U of H game, I would also love to not see us go 0 for 2 of that home and home. Like I would not be angry or sad at all if that game doesn't happen in 2020 here, because UNLV has become a much different animal than the program that you scheduled. Sir. I think it was like 21 or something like that as when we officially put it on the calendar.
Yes, sir.
So I like that we have slightly different answers here. I would put the game back on the schedule for 2031 and 32, but it's going to be a situation where it's a U of H home game and then a game at NRG. No more games at Rice Stadium until it's not a complete dump. And I'm more sympathetic to Rice and have more of a desire to keep this game going than I think a lot of Cougar fans do. But it shouldn't be lost on us that this school that has an endowment that is valued, I checked it, this year at $7.5 billion, Bobby, chooses still to play in a stadium built in 1950 with only a fraction of the needed upgrades that you would need for a facility of that age over this time.
Is it a historical place?
Yeah, well, very, very. What would you say?
No, I mean,
like, it was like his official historical site or something like that.
You keep talking. I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, and yeah, I realize also that $7.5 billion valuation. I'm a lowly U of H grad, but I know that doesn't mean they have $7.5 billion sitting in a Swiss bank account. That's like value of stocks and stuff. But I don't think the most ardent Rice fans would disagree with me that Rice is an institution woefully underinvests in athletics for how wealthy they are. Rice can get the home team privileges when the game's in NRG, but under no circumstances do you give this extraordinarily wealthy private school the charity of a home game here. Like if that is Rice's condition on this game happening again, this game doesn't happen. Then we don't make us go to that venue until it's actually a serious venue. And I know you guys have the money to make, don't make us give you a game at this dump that you out of principle have only done minimal things to actually make, I think, make it a good venue. And then I'd probably do the same set for like 20, 35 and 36, because I don't think either fan base is dying to have 6 straight years of this game. But I do think if it has periodic breaks, that it gives it more juice. It gives it, I think, more appeal for both fan bases. So I think I would play it 4 times out of a 7-year stretch once these teams have openings again. That's my general thing that I would do.
I think if you are going to do it every year, maybe like I said, then you go at TDECU, and in exchange for playing the game with Rice, the condition, if you want the home and home, right, is you got to play it at NRG and we get part of the money there. Like we get to sell our own tickets, something like that.
Or I don't know. if they were like, we'll do it 4 years, you could have 2 at your home stadium, 1 at NRG, and then maybe like 1 at ours. I don't think I would say yes for sure, but I would at least,
Yep.
I wouldn't at least reject it
That's
at
fair.
him, because that would be okay. 4 times and 3 of them we're not giving him a game at Rice. And maybe, I don't know, they might say, hey, we have a plan by then to knock out the completely unnecessary upper deck and then just continue build on some of the stuff we've at least started to do. So,
yep.
Bobby, Big 12 football's here. Are you ready to talk about our first opponent?
Yeah, man.
So before we get to our thoughts on this opener, though, we are excited for you guys to hear this week's guest, another first-timer on the pod, but considering this is our first time seeing this specific program, no matter their prominence, it's always good to get a subject matter expert in, somebody who's been on the Colorado Buffaloes beat for a long time. So let's hear Bobby and I get to learn a little bit more about this week's opponent. We're thrilled to have joining us for the first time on the Scott and Holm podcast tonight someone who will help the two of us get to know the Colorado Buffaloes football program a bit better. He's been on the Buffs beat for over a decade, currently writes for the Boulder Daily Camera and Buff Zone. Brian Howell, thanks for coming on the Scott and Holm podcast.
You bet. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
I was going to jokingly lead off with who's going to be the starting quarterback on Friday question, but I mean, it's clear Deion Sanders intends to leave that question unanswered in the public sphere, and we'll probably see multiple quarterbacks play on Friday night. So I'll ask you, through 2 weeks of football, what have you seen so far from each of the 3 Buffs quarterbacks who have gotten on the field?
Yeah, I think the one thing I can pretty certainly say is that it will not be Julian Lewis. I think he's, while he's probably the biggest name of the 3, he was the one that just didn't look ready at all on Saturday. I mean, he looks like the 17-year-old kid that he is, and I think he's going to be fantastic, but he looked a little overwhelmed on Saturday. I think Caden Salter has looked just fine. I mean, I think he had some nerves on opening night against Georgia Tech, and that was clear. And he missed some throws, but he also gave him a shot to win that game against what I think is a really good and probably underrated ACC team. And frankly, he came out and looked really good early in the game on Saturday. But Coach Prime had this predetermined quarterback rotation. By the time he went back to Caden, it was fourth quarter, and he's coming in cold, and he didn't look great. But I thought he looked good early in the game. And then Ryan Staub just came out of nowhere. We had no idea he was going to even be playing. And all of a sudden he gets in there and throws 2 touchdown passes, leads him to 3 touchdowns, and was the star of the show on Saturday. So I don't really know what to expect on Friday night.
So for U of H fans who are unaware, Colorado's offensive coordinator is a multi-time NFL head coach and longtime assistant in Pat Shurmur. Obviously, he has a much different group to work with on this Buffs roster than what was on his team last year, obviously with Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, LaJohntay Webster, and others now playing professionally. From what you have seen, what kind of identity do you think this Colorado team and offense is trying to have in 2025?
Yeah, I think they're trying to have an identity as a team that can run the ball when they want to, and and be explosive in the passing game. I think that's what they're trying to do, and they've been able to run the ball a little bit better. I mean, they were last in the country, kind of by a wide margin the last couple of years. They were terrible at running the ball, but these first couple games they've been pretty solid at it. But the passing game hasn't been there. I mean, the wide receivers hardly got involved in week 1. And it took Ryan Staub to get involved in week 2. And that's sort of why I opened the door to Ryan starting this week, is that he was the one that finally went downfield and hit some explosive plays in the passing game. And he's not the runner that Caden Salter is, but he was the one that finally got those receivers involved. As far as identity, I think that's what it is. I think they want to be balanced and show off their explosiveness in receivers, but also run the ball. But I think they're still trying to figure that out.
I wanted to zoom out for a second, ask you, while we have you, a bigger picture Colorado football question. Somebody who's been on the Buffs beat long before this current head coach. What was the biggest shock moment or moments for you? And going from covering what was, I don't think I'm being uncharitable in saying, most seasons one of the worst power conference football programs, to one the past couple seasons in this one being one of the more covered and paid attention to in the entire sport.
Yeah, it was certainly things changed overnight. When you're covering this program. I mean, I've given this example before, but since I'm new on your show, I'll give this example that 2022, the last road game. They go up to Washington, and they have interim coach Mike Sanford, and the press conference up there. I brought my son with me on the trip, and he's was 12 years old at the time, I think. The press conference was me and my son talking to Mike Sanford and one of the players. And then you fast forward to the next season. They're at TCU, and there was like 30 media that were covering Colorado on the road. So, and there's never less than, you know, 50 people in a press conference post game now. So it's quite a bit different. And I think the biggest moment, that you're asking about is that first season when they're playing Colorado State, and they run out to the field, and you hear a rap song on the loudspeakers and everything. Then you kind of look in the end zone, and you're like, oh, Lil Wayne's in the end zone rapping right now, singing a song live, and the end zone, like, what is going on here? So, there's been several moments like that. You're like, this is not the Colorado I'm used to covering.
So we'll zoom back in just kind of real quick and return to some on-field talk about the Buffs. One of the stats that really stood out to me here early in the season was that the Buffs defense has only created 3 sacks through 2 games. From watching this team, do you believe that stat is actually reflective of the team's ability to create pressure on opposing quarterbacks, or is it kind of one of those things where they're getting pressure, but maybe it's not quite getting home, but it is being disruptive?
I think it's getting there. I think there's a little more pressure than what that stat shows, but it's got to get better. I mean, they were not very good at getting to the quarterback early last season and wound up leading the Big 12 in sacks. If you looked at them through 4 weeks, you'd be like, man, they can't get to the quarterback. They wind up leading the conference. So I think it's one of those things that's a work in progress. That entire defense really is a work in progress right now. They have a lot of new faces that are playing and trying to mesh, and I think that's the bigger byproduct of what we're seeing there. I think there's some pressure that they're getting there, but like they got to Haynes King several times that opening night. But Haynes is such a veteran that he would make a throw. There was a couple times like, man, they have him dead to rights, and then he would find somebody as he's getting hit, and it's a 10-yard completion for a first down. And so they're getting there, I think, and with a little less veteran quarterback, they might have a few more sacks.
I'm gonna call an audible here, Bobby. You can ask the next 2 questions, but I'm curious. This is a bigger picture question I had, because I think one of the biggest questions when Dion came in is, can you build something in the trenches? Like, obviously you can bring in guys at, the perimeter, receivers, defensive backs, even backs and quarterbacks, and be kind of a plug and play process. Now that we're in year 3, now that we have something close to an extended tenure of Deion Sanders' time as head coach here, has Colorado been able to build something satisfactory on really both sides of the line, or has any success that Colorado's had, which I would say is not insignificant, certainly if you look at last season, has it just been kind of in spite of some uneven line play?
Yeah, build is kind of an interesting question, because they, build to me would suggest, recruiting and you're developing guys, things like that, which they haven't really done on the lines. But the lines were not very good the last 2 years, and really they won 9 games last year because they had Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, and they had other really good players, but those 2 guys masked a lot of things. And while Shedeur was sacked a lot, he avoided a lot of sacks as well. This year is the best offensive line they've had. I hesitate saying build because it's a portal line. Jordan Seaton is the one guy that they get out of the high school ranks, and he was the number 1 rated guy coming out of 2024. But the rest of their line is all portal guys, and they're better. They've looked better than they have the last 2 years, and so I guess they built something quickly. Defensive line, sort of the same thing. It's like it's a whole bunch of seniors that are on that defensive line, and a lot that weren't here last year. And but then there's a kid that came in as a freshman in 2024 that came out of nowhere all of a sudden late in fall camp, and he's been a starter the last 2 weeks and played really well. Brandon Davis Swain. So I guess they're sort of building, but they're filling in a lot of holes through the transfer portal on those lines.
So this is a question we ask, I think, all of our guests. Can you give us a Colorado player who's been a key contributor, or who you think could be a key contributor in Friday's game, that Sam and I may be overlooking in our efforts as people who don't watch every snap of Colorado football to preview this team?
Yeah, there's a kid at running back that I overlooked coming into this season. Simeon Price is a kid that I think he's a fifth-year senior. He started his career at Mississippi State, played last year at Coastal Carolina, and they signed him this summer. And I'm like, okay, he's got 300 career rushing yards. I mean, this guy's not going to do anything. And he has looked really good the first 2 weeks. Not a ton. He's not racking up 100-yard games, but he runs the ball really hard. And he broke off a couple big runs the other day. He uses the spin move a lot. He likes to jump over people and spin. But he's a guy that could make some plays that's probably not on people's radar. That he could make some plays on Friday night, I think, and even as a receiver.
All right, so I'm gonna ask a kind of fun question here. I'm kind of the funny guy, I guess you could say, on our podcast who finds the things that kind of make me laugh. And one of the big stories coming out of Colorado, one of the things I love about college football is the traditions. And one of the big things right before the season starts is Ralphie 6 was no longer running out due to an indifference to running, which same. But what does that look like? And then there's Ralphie 7 is training for her debut. What does training a giant buffalo even look like to run the field?
Well, when you ask about what does indifference to running look like for a buffalo, just go find YouTube and find Ralphie Alamo Bowl. Watch her run at the Alamo Bowl this last December, and you'll see
I'm writing it down.
Yes, you will see the indifference of running because there was no running whatsoever. It was a walk, a little bit of a trot, and then they finally turn her. She sees her trailer. She's like, "Oh, okay, now I'm getting out of here," and she kind of jogs to the trailer. So yeah, that's the indifference running. That is the definition right there. They did announce her retirement right before the season, but that was a decision basically made after the Alamo Bowl. They've been training Ralphie 7 all off season, and what the training looks like is they've got handlers. I don't know how many people there are, 10, 12, that they work with her, and they come to the stadium and they practice runs. When nobody's there, and they practice running and try to get her ready. They do things where they get her accustomed to being around people because Buffalo are not used to being around 50,000 people, a lot of times. So there's a lot of different things that go with that. I expect to see Ralphie 7 at some point this year. I don't know when, but it hasn't been the first 2 games, and I don't know if it'll be next week or not, but I expect to see her at some point.
Yeah, it's about what you do when nobody's looking, when you're running those reps at practice. So
Right.
I totally get that.
We wanted to close with you with one more big picture question, Brian. You've been on this beat long enough to see CU's departure from the Big 12 to the Pac-12 and then return to the Big 12 officially prior to the last athletic season. From your vantage point, how do Buff fans feel about being back in their new/old conference as compared to the just over a decade in the Pac-12?
Yeah, I think that for the most part, their time in the Pac-12, they enjoyed it. It was a lot of new places to go to. There's a lot of alumni in the Pac-12 footprint, and frankly, this is no offense to any of the cities in the Big 12, but people liked going to Seattle and San Francisco and LA. Now you don't get to. Now you go to Ames, Iowa, or Manhattan, or whatever. And so it's different from that point. But the way things were ending with the Pac-12 and no media deal and just talk about it for 2 years, I think there was just a lot of relief to get out of that and get back to the stability that the Big 12 offered. And I think there are some Buff fans that, especially the longtime ones, that are excited about renewing some rivalries with K-State and Kansas and Iowa State and Oklahoma State. And they're excited about some new ones with Houston, BYU, some teams like that. So I think there's generally excitement about it. For the most part, it's financial, and it's, hey, we're out of that mess that the Pac-12 was at the end.
Yeah, I just happened to randomly be in LA 4 years ago for when CU was out at the Rose Bowl and was actually pleasantly surprised how many CU fans were there in Pasadena. Brian, thank you so much for taking a little time every day to help Bobby and I and also our listeners learn a bit more about Friday's opponent.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. And like I said, go to YouTube, find Alamo Bowl Ralphie, and yeah. Or you can watch me. You can watch Bobby as far as indifference to running, but watch Ralphie on that Alamo Bowl, and you'll know That's exactly what the difference of running is.
You have both of our verbal promises that we will be doing this within 5 minutes of this interview. I know.
Yes.
Absolutely. We will probably send it to each other.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
I want to thank him so much for coming on to the pod. Really good guest. And I just want to say I really enjoyed the Ralphie talk, and he recommended that you go watch a Ralphie video at the Alamo Bowl to see what an indifference to running is. Legitimately could not stop laughing. It is one of the funniest videos I've seen in a very long time, because I'll just like play it out for you a little bit, but it's like a minute long, and the first 30 seconds are like the PA announcer at the Alamo Dome, like, all right, Colorado fans, let's get excited, trying to pump everybody up. And then you hear him go, and here's Ralphie. And then the buffalo just walks out.
Extremely slow trot. Extremely.
I mean, Ralphie was like, shit, here we go again. Like, when he said, go look it up, I was like, done. And then when he said it describes an indifference to running, Sam, he's right. It is the best way to define an indifference to running. So, Sam, go ahead, take it away with your thoughts on Colorado.
I was just gonna say, adding the funniest part, and Brian kind of described in his answer, is for me the part I enjoy most is like where they open the trailer and Ralphie sees that, is like, oh yeah, this is a place I actually want to run to, and just like out of here, not doing this anymore.
So good.
Talk about the actual Colorado Buffaloes. We did have I would say roughly 24 hours since we talked with Brian, and as we sit down and record, we got an ESPN report that Colorado would be starting Ryan Staub, the previously unknown third stringer who had that breakout game against Delaware. Colorado's head coach, who we'll get to him a little bit later, because I don't know if you know this, Bobby, but he has a pretty interesting and unconventional backstory of how he got to be the head coach of this program. He refuted that report, though, today. Though it does seem to be confirmed, no one seemed to be arguing that Staub is getting a lot of their first-team quarterback reps in practice. At the risk of speaking for you, I don't think that news breaking between the interview and now really changes our opinion that we're likely going to see, that we were kind of expecting to see Staub and also their previous incumbent starter, Caden Salter, playing in Houston this week.
Heck, man, you heard how their coach, who I believe wants to go by Coach Prime, very interesting.
We'll get to it later, guys. Don't worry, because I don't know if you guys are aware of this guy. He's an interesting character.
Yeah, he was very happy with his quarterback post the game last week. It's not a surprise at all that Staub is playing this game.
Yeah, two guys that they're going to see we're going to see at quarterback for Colorado each bring something interesting. Caden Salter, the guy who started the last 2 weeks, was a multi-year starter at Liberty, DFW guy, originally from Cedar Hill. Started for Liberty in 2023 when they were the Group of 5 team that got the New Year's Six Bowl invite. You might remember they got absolutely smoked by Oregon. Also started last year for them. I think he had some injury issues last year, but started most of the year at least. Threw for about 4,700 yards and rushed for over 1,700 in these last 2 seasons before this one. If there's anything notable, at least that I saw from his 2 games at CU, hasn't really been able to do as much as a dual threat in these first 2 games of the season. Ryan Staub is a really interesting story. He was a high 3-star recruit. He's from around the LA area, Stevenson Ranch. I was actually committed to the last Colorado staff, but was kept on in their first signing class, which, believe me, that staff wasn't shy to tell current Colorado players and signees to kick rocks if they weren't to their standard, which was the case for most of them. Staub wasn't that. Was I think technically Shadur Sanders' backup these past 2 seasons, but saw pretty minimal action. I think only had 4 attempts last year, and then came in last week and did incredibly well against Delaware, threw 2 touchdown passes and averaged just under 16 yards per attempt, which is pretty impressive. Bobby, what have you seen from these 2 guys, and just what have you seen generally from the Colorado offense that you think's noteworthy?
Yeah, man, just a real kind of tough team to preview. It's so hard to preview this offense because, like, you saw Staub and he looked great. He also threw 10 passes, right? And
it's Delaware.
Yeah, he went 7 of 10 versus Delaware. And you look at the stats, and like you said, they're gaudy, they're huge. But if you would have told me heading into this season, I mean, Coach Prime brought 2 quarterbacks to media day, and neither one of them is probably the likely starter for this game. Nobody likes having 3 quarterbacks that they're trying to figure out which one is going to be their guy. Granted, Staub looked really good, but yeah, he was their 3rd string heading into this year. They have a 5-star guy, a good transfer. This offense has looked decent. They looked good against Delaware. It didn't look great against Georgia Tech, kind of looking at it. I thought they were fine. But overall, this whole team is just kind of confusing. You can even look at their defense as a real heckle and jive as well.
Yeah, don't hate that your defensive staff actually now has a partial game of film on Ryan Staub playing in meaningful-ish game situations. Really, really expect, as we've both said now multiple times, that we will see both of these guys take some snaps on Friday night. Very new group of backs and receivers for Colorado as well, because they didn't lose Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. You also had guys like Jimmy Horn, LaJonte Webster, and Will Shepard, who were a big part of their offense last year, and they're also gone. So very new looking group. DeKalen Taylor is a new Colorado player with a really interesting backstory. Kind of looks like your typical undersized slot receiver. Played his entire career before this season at FCS Power Incarnate Word in San Antonio. Switched to running back last year at UIW, and that is still his listed position at Colorado. But I expect he'll be very involved in both the Buffs' passing and rushing attacks. Some other interesting guys that I noticed. Sincere Brown's another former FCS player, played most recently at Campbell. Only has 4 receptions, but 30 yards a pop on those receptions. Definitely jumps off the page at you. Yeah. I expect we'll see a decent amount in the run game of both Simeon Price and Micah Welch. I believe Micah Welch was the guy that Brian name-checked for us. Welch is one of those shorter backs who looks like he could be a tough guy to tackle. And not saying these guys were exactly as good as Webb, but I like that we got a heavy dose of 2 small, tougher to tackle Rice backs in your most recent game before getting an extended look at Welch this week. Brian also mentioned their one blue chip high school offensive lineman recruit, Jordan Seaton, and he's a pretty safe bet to be a Sunday player, and I would bet a reasonably high draft pick when he's eligible here in 2 years. A lot of the rest of their offensive line are guys who started elsewhere. Zarian McGill was previously at La Tech and ULM. Larry Johnson III was previously at Tennessee, and then Zy Chrysler at Illinois. At the risk of sounding overly confident, which I won't say I am, I respect this opponent. I think it's going to be a close game, one that U of H will have to play its best effort to win. I'm bought in on this being a pretty solid Cougar defensive front, and the Buffs only managed 3.3 yards per carry last week against Delaware. And I don't know Delaware's too deep. I'm not an expert on Delaware. I think U of H has a better defensive front than Delaware. If they can only do 3.3 yards per carry at home, I realize Ryan Staub looked really good throwing the ball, and if the Cougs can't get consistent pressure against a better opponent than the last 2, that obviously puts less of a magnifying glass in the run game. But I think if you're on the Colorado side, it has to be a question whether or not you can establish a run against what's looking like, despite a lot of new faces, a pretty salty Cougar defensive front.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I'm not very concerned with their run game. I think it's the unknown of going into what is it going to look like defending the pass against them.
To my eye, their defenses has a bit more in terms of returning production from last season, but you still have impact transfers up there, like their leading tackler, Reginald Hughes, who was previously under Rich Rod at Jackson State, and Martavius French, who comes from the UTSA program that we're pretty familiar with. What gives me heartburn, this will probably be the case for most of the opponents until we have even more games and a better read on what this Cougar offensive line can do, is this Buffs defense's ability to create pressure and rush the passer. Because just on what bits and pieces I know, I'm inclined to agree with our guest that CU's 3 sacks through 2 games isn't super indicative of their ability to rush the passer. Georgia Tech isn't a team that's going to give you as many drop back chances as your average college offenses, which is why I also don't put a ton of stock in them allowing over 200 rushing yards per game, because Georgia Tech, I think, will be one of the sport's best rushing offenses this year. It's all said and done, and not as comfortable saying that's going to be the Cougars necessarily this season, as much as I've seen good things through 2 weeks. And their recent opponent, Delaware, didn't do much in the run game last week as well. I would bet U of H kind of splits the difference between Delaware and Georgia Tech there. I noticed, glancing at their defensive staff, they have some prominent NFL names as position coaches on that side of the ball. Warren Sapp is the big one, defensive pass rush coordinator. But another guy who I completely forgotten, but I remember him now. Longtime NFL nose tackle, Domata Pecco, played for the Bengals. Is the guy who had he always had like the big bushy hair coming out of the back of his helmet. So a mainstay for those Bengals teams that would win 8 to 10 games and go out in the first round of the playoffs. But obviously a very good.
Shout out Carson Palmer.
Yeah, shout out Carson Palmer and then subsequently Andy Dalton. Also, not an NFL name necessarily, though I think he did play a bit there. Legendary Cougar receiver from the run and shoot era, Jason Phillips, who was also a former longtime assistant for the program, is on Deion's staff as well and has been with him, I think, since Jackson State. Bobby, I did learn something in doing this preview, if I could share with you, if you don't have any more defensive thoughts.
No, my whole defensive thought was you said most of it was that their defense gave up a bunch of yards to Georgia Tech. I have seen nothing from our run game that would indicate that we're going to have a Georgia Tech type performance, but I definitely think we're better than Delaware. We definitely split the middle there. So
I did learn something interesting here. Apparently, Colorado's head coach is a former NFL player named Deion Sanders. From what I saw on his Wikipedia page, I had to kind of learn. It seemed like he was a journeyman. He played for a bunch of teams, and I think he did some return man work too. I mean, you grew up a Cowboys fan. Was he like a prominent player, face of the franchise guy from that 90s era of the Cowboys that you remember?
I don't know if I would say he was the face of the franchise. That definitely went more to like Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, Troy Aikman. So yeah, I mean,
Nate Newton.
Was, yeah. I don't know if Nate Newton is exactly the face of that Cowboys franchise. Larry Allen, maybe if we go there. Alvin Harper, big role there. So yeah, I mean, he was definitely on those teams. But yeah, when I think 90s Cowboys, he's probably 5th or 6th.
And you mentioned he has the nickname Coach Prime, and I saw that on his Colorado bio page as well. I'm not sure about the origin of that one. I'm going to take a stab at it. He's a big fan of prime numbers. And I mean, who isn't? They're pretty neat. Like 7, 47,
11,
37, 11, 13. 13's a pretty nifty one.
That's my lucky number.
Yeah, there we go. So pretty interesting story there. I mean, maybe at some point the college football media landscape and the larger sports media ecosystem will pick up on this story and talk about it, because he seems like a pretty interesting character. And we like to find the overlooked things when we like look at an opponent and dig into the show. And this I think this is one of them, Bobby. Like
we'll have to we'll have to do some more research on this Coach.
Let us know.
Guy.
Like, let Bobby know he's at #1 Cougar on Twitter. If you knew about Deion Sanders before this show, if you had a good inkling that this was the interesting opposing coach, at Bobby and tell him all about it.
He couldn't have been too good. I mean, he couldn't have been too good. He played for 5 teams.
Exactly. I mean, he was on the Baltimore Ravens in 2004 and 2005. Like,
yeah.
With no Ray Lewis, no what's his name? He just passed Tony. He's no Tony Siragusa.
Siragusa, yeah.
As far as I know.
Yeah. For sure.
Bobby, do you have any other thought after that definitely serious segment? Because I want to make it clear. Like sometimes like hosts will be like, that was all a joke. Bobby are dead serious. We didn't know who this guy was before the show. And quite frankly, we think he could use with more coverage the college football media ecosystem. I haven't gotten enough Deion Sanders personally.
Yeah.
Coach Prime. Sorry, excuse me. Coach Prime. Big fan of prime numbers. Bobby, do you have any other thoughts about the Colorado Buffaloes in Friday's game?
No, man. I think we did a pretty good job there.
I think we did a pretty good job too. I'm not going to belabor the point, because if you're listening to this pod, good chances are you're the kind of fan who's at U of H football games, if at all possible. But if you live in or near Houston and have the ability to go, please get out to campus for Friday night's game. My feelings on weeknight college football are kind of mixed, but I also have so many great memories of great Cougar football atmospheres for weeknight big opponent games like this one. I was personally supposed to be at this game, and now I won't be able to attend for plumbing related reasons I alluded to at the top of the show, out of my control. So I beseech you, any of you listening who may be on the fence about attending in person, to get out there, because I can't describe how much I wish I was going to be there with all of y'all, yelling my lungs out and cheering on the Cougs for a big ESPN game.
And just real quick, can our fans actually do something? I do this pretty often with my job. Just bring your clothes that you're going to wear to the game with you to work on Friday, and then change in the car or change in the bathroom at work. Just do that. Find a parking garage on your way to the game, go to the top and change. In that way,
or if you're like a gym member, go to your like your
Yes.
gym probably has a locker room. Like,
just go on the way. Don't go home first. Don't go home first. I understand if you're gonna go like get your kids or something, like okay, but like
tell them to
don't go
catch a
home.
bus there. My dad taught me how to catch a bus to downtown Houston when I was like 11 or 12.
I'm pretty sure.
And Dad, if you're listening, I appreciate that. I really genuinely do. Get those kids on like the 8 or something like that.
It's like just do that. Just don't go home first. Just change in your car. And then when you get home, you just take your work clothes upstairs or into your house, and you can then wash them and do all that there. Like, take the clothes with you. It takes a little bit of foresight, like just a little bit of thinking. Like if you're wearing slacks, maybe a pair of shorts, get a Cougar red t-shirt, shoes. Don't forget socks, right? Because you don't want to wear your work socks in your tennis shoes. That would be ridiculous. So, like, just pack everything, have a to-go bag, and take it with you. Just change in the car. I don't know.
No, good plan. Very, very good suggestion. All right, Bobby, you ready to make some picks and talk about last week's picks?
Buddy.
So, no sugarcoating it, Bobby. You absolutely wiped the floor with me this week. You went 2-1, correctly picking the 2 items related to the U of H game, and obviously the 2 biggest points games that we pick weekly. You had U of H minus 11.5, which they covered easily. And the really painful one for my purposes, you had Rice over 50.5 passing yards, which Rice had 51. You cleared it by
and it
half
was
a
a garbage
yard.
time 1-2.
I take no solace as the original line maker here that my number was so close to the mark and that you just cleared it. Your one unsuccessful pick out of the 3 was Arizona State minus 6.5 as they lost 24-20 on the road to Mississippi
And now
State.
we both lost an Arizona State bet. So
exactly. We'll see if we go back to that well this year. I bet I go at least once, as much as everything in my body screams against doing it. I went 1-2. My only successful pick was the non-U of H pick of Iowa and Iowa State under 41.5. That one finished at 29. But my 2 U of H picks, the game total under 39.5 points and the Rice under 170.5 rushing yards, which Rice cleared by 6, were incorrect. Thus, now, Bobby, you hold a 55-35 lead on the season total. Not an insurmountable deficit for yours truly, but you kicked my ass last week, bud. So I was going to say, let's get to this week, unless you had another thought.
Nope.
I was going to get to this week's 3 picks, but if you have something.
No, go ahead.
Bobby, what was your first pick from the point spread and points total in this one?
Okay, so this game has moved wildly. I don't know if you've noticed that. Like, it opened at 3.5 in most places. It went to 6, or it opened at 6 at Circa. Not sure why they were so far off of everyone else.
But it ended up getting there.
But it ended up getting to 6.5, which when I wrote this down is what it was at. It is currently at 5.5. Either way, I'm still going to take the under there. I think that the Cougs will win, but 6.5 is a lot of points, man. A touchdown favorite.
Wait, are you taking the under or are you taking Colorado plus 6.5?
Oh, I'm sorry. I said under. I'm sorry. I'm taking Colorado plus 6.5. I'm sorry. I misspoke there. I'm taking Colorado plus 6.5. It just feels like a lot. Like 6.5 feels like a lot. I think the Cougs win. If I were betting, I'd take the Cougs money line. But 6 just, this feels like a 24-21 kind of game to me. 6.5 feels like a lot. I think the Cougs win, but 6.5 feels like a lot. And then, you set this one, rushing touchdowns. You have the Cougs at 2.5. I think that's a fair number. But I am going to go under. If I think it's a 24-21 game, it's going to be tough to get all 3 touchdowns. On the ground, I don't exactly see that happening. Maybe a 2-1 kind of deal. So I'll take the Cougs under there. And then finally, let me pull it up here just to make sure I'm not losing my mind. I have... Crap. I'm sorry, Sam. I had this pulled up. I am going to take... The weirdest game for me was one... on Friday.
So for the listeners, by the way, this is a non-U of H, from a non-U of H
Yes.
Big 12 game, which
Yes.
admittedly we didn't start. We ended up accidentally both picking Big 12 games after week 1. We're like, yeah, we'll just do this Big 12 going forward.
Yeah, and I am going to take West Virginia plus 7.5.
Ooh.
versus Pitt. The game's at West Virginia. And I think that Pitt's probably going to win that game, but West Virginia, I don't see going down by more than a touchdown in that game.
Yeah, I knew the backyard brawl was this way. I couldn't remember though if it was in Morgantown or Pittsburgh. And yeah,
it's in Morgantown.
Yeah,
7.5's a lot.
If it was in Pittsburgh, I wouldn't have obviously dissuaded you from it, but I would have been like, oh, buddy, they were running backs out for the season. They look great against Ohio. But yeah, rivalry game, I could dig it.
Yep.
So for my first one, my point spread, points total one, I'm gonna not touch the spread, but I'm going with the total here. I think this will be a slightly higher scoring game than the books do, and I'm going with the over 43.5 points on this one. I don't think this will be a vintage U of H kind of defense optional game, but I could see this, to what you said, being a 24-21 or 31-24, even 34-24 kind of game, despite these teams, I think, each having modest starts on offense. I feel pretty good about at least getting somewhat over this point total. My team props pick, despite how this went for me in week one, where the Cougars were just under the turnover total. I had like 3 drop picks, which any one of those would have gotten me over. I believe this Cougar defense has a third straight multi-turnover game in them. So I'm saying the Cougar defense will go over 1.5 turnovers forced on Friday night. Don't know if it'll be as high as 3, but I could see an interception and a fumble recovery or 2 picks, especially if Colorado is down and having to throw a lot with Ryan Staub, a quarterback who looked great last week, but didn't have, admittedly, a ton of experience. My non-U of H pick for a third and final pick, I'm going with Texas Tech minus 23.5 against Oregon State. That's a big number, and I've specifically been burned once by a big line, by a Big 12 favorite in a home game, but even acknowledging that Tech has played a shamefully soft schedule early in the season, Grambling and Kent State, Oregon State looks bad. Capital B-A-D, bad. We'll talk about them in a couple weeks. I have a hard time not seeing Tech and Lubbock getting this to at least a 24-point margin and thus covering my spread here, even if the idea of getting burned by another big line doesn't, I guess it's not lost on me that this could happen again.
Yeah.
All right, Bobby, we'll finally go away from football here. Talk about Cougar Volleyball, the horror. We finally experienced a U of H team losing a specific sporting event this season, but in all seriousness, Cougar Volleyball's performance from their first homestand of the season, where they went 2-1, hosting the Flo Hyman Classic, ultimately had a lot more positives with the negatives. I believe my last thought when we previewed this past weekend was 2-1 would have me feeling good, and 3-0 would have been a dramatic statement of intent. We didn't get the absolute best case scenario here, but this still ended up being a 2-1 weekend with, as I said, a lot more positives than negatives from your wins over San Diego State and Omaha, and ultimately what was a loss to LSU in the weekend's final match. Bobby, what were your biggest takeaways from this first home weekend of Cougar Volleyball?
Yeah, man, I think you got what you expected. The 5-setter with San Diego State, a sweep of a solid Omaha team, and then losing to LSU in 3 sets, getting swept by LSU. Maybe you'd like to see you win a set there, something along those lines. You played them as close as you could in the final 2 sets. Kind of got blown out in the first set, but the next 2 sets you looked pretty good. I think one was 25-23, the other was 26-24, maybe.
Yep,
maybe
that's that. I'm almost positive that's right.
Yeah. So you'd like to see him win a set, but it happens. The big name I noticed that hadn't really popped up so far in the season on the kill side was Avery Shemitis. Hadn't really seen much of her in the first couple of weekends. Saw her come out, was third on the team in kills for I think all 3 games. Maybe was second in one of the games. But good to see adding more depth to the team there. I don't know what happened those first couple of weeks, but you saw her kind of pop in and it really looked good in the in this weekend.
Yeah, you have to have that perfect opening weekend in North Carolina where you didn't drop a single set. I think it was beneficial that you got pushed in the opener to 5 sets like you did against San Diego State in that one Thursday night. Because, I mean, that was a big pain point last year. You had a really hard time, and it became apparent at the start of that season, finishing off 5 setters. More specifically, losing 5 setters where you spent a lot of the match looking like the better team, but just couldn't finish it off. And thankfully that wasn't the case on Thursday night. Aztecs came out of the gates extremely hot in that one, hit 423 in the first set, but that proved, as you'd probably expect, unsustainable. Came down to earth a bit of the remaining 4 sets. They did take the third set and really put your backs against the wall, but the final 2 sets weren't thankfully anything that dramatic. Cougs ended up getting the win in 5 sets. Avery Shemitis, I think, foreshadowing a really great weekend that she had in that one. 11 kills, 4 in the final 2 sets, and hitting 391, which we can confirm very, very good. And that Friday win over Omaha also showed this team's ability, their mental fortitude, which you wouldn't think would be the case in a 3-0 win. But worth a reminder, Omaha is a strong mid-major program. They went to the NCAAs 2 seasons ago. They were 14-2 in their conference last season. They played you to a 5-setter in last season's opener, but ultimately this one wasn't that close. You got up to a 14-6 deficit early on, which I think is where the mental toughness came in. You were down 17-11 later. I started watching that one right. I think we were down like 13-6 when I finally was able to get ESPN app on my bedroom TV. Cougs stormed back to tie that one at 20, put away a Mavericks team. They fought off 3 different set points. I remember watching it live and thinking these guys will not go away. They fought off 3 different set points before the Cougs finally closed it out. 27-25, and you didn't really need any dramatic comebacks for the rest of that match. But I will say the Mavs didn't go quietly into the night. You had to fight to win the last 2 sets, but ultimately didn't let them take a set. Bree Rita, she was quite often in the opening weekend, was your offensive leader in this one, had 16 kills and hit a really impressive 341, though. I think my player of the game of that first match was Lottie Scully, who had 34 assists, which is a really good number in a 3-set match, but also had 7 digs, led the team with 4 service aces as well. Really, really impacted the game positively for you in a lot of ways. We both mentioned it. The finale was unfortunately that 3-0 loss to LSU. Really did look like a match because I had this on among other games while I was actually, I think, cooking during the afternoon college football window, where I also multi-screened Cougar volleyball. Both teams kind of generally looked worn down. I mean, they were both playing their third match in 3 days. Credit to the Tigers for handling it better than your homestanding Cougars. But I mean, 38 combined attack errors in 3 sets played, I think speaks to 2 teams kind of running on empty there. It also seemed to my semi-trained eye, I could be wrong about this, but it seemed like David Rare subbed a bit more liberally against the Tigers. You saw a bit more of Alyssa Gonzalez and Tara Greenberry, just to use 2 examples in the finale, than you did the first 2 matches. A bit less of Bree Reed as well, which, I mean, long season. I think the only thing that really stings, you were up 23-20 when it ended up being the final set, and instead of closing that one out and at least pushing LSU to 4 sets and maybe getting some doubt in their mind, you lost that and ended up, your opponents ended up going on a 6-1 run to beat you there. But I mean, I don't think you freak out too much about that. I think you still take away a majority of positives from the weekend.
Absolutely.
So up next, Cougars will have by far their most challenging weekend of the non-conference schedule, going to Lexington, Kentucky, and playing the hosts, the number 3 Kentucky Wildcats and the number 4 Purdue Boilermakers. Don't need to probably spell it out too much based on those rankings I just said. These are 2 really good programs. Kentucky is 3-1, and their only loss this season is in 5 sets to the current unanimous number 1 Nebraska. Purdue has a slightly more modest resume, but their only loss was to number 23 Georgia Tech. I know you're aware of this, Bobby, because actually I looked it up. I looked up this person's name between our text thread. Your incredible volleyball scouting of Chloe Chacoin, unfortunately, will not come in handy for us this year. She was an all Big Ten outside here for Purdue. Yep, she transferred to Louisville, which has allowed Bobby a lifetime of anecdotally saying that he knows ball when it comes to volleyball. Can't decide whether that's a good or bad thing. But even without Chacoin, the Boilermakers are still one of the better teams in the country. The only thing I will note, because that's probably the more winnable of the 2 matches, though neither is especially winnable, the Boilermakers don't have a sweep win yet this year, so maybe the Cougars can fare a bit better against Purdue than they did when they did last year and faced them with Chloe Chacoin.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, as you pointed out, is it's the hardest week of the year for the Cougs volleyball team. You'd like to just win a couple of sets. I think that'd be huge, right? If you can win a set in each match, that'd be massive. Maybe you play well. I mean, if you win a match here, you've made a pretty big statement. You're probably not going to be like receiving votes or anything like that, but you will let it be known that you will be a tough out in the Big 12 more so than you probably have so far this year.
No doubt. So we'll get to the other Cougar fall sport that we've not talked about, the third, but not last in our hearts, but the third sport we're going to talk about from the fall season tonight. Cougar soccer remains unbeaten after 2 more non-conference games. In the past week, as expected, McNeese Day on Thursday proved pretty little match for the Cougars, who ultimately took this one 8-0 with 8 different Cougars finding the back of the net. Cougars only allowed 2 cowgirl shots the entire match. Anything to add on that one, Bobby?
No, man. One quick thing. Cool that you get 8 goals from 8 different players. I don't know if you noticed that, Sam.
Oh, yeah. That is really cool. As we kind of expected, the Sunday night roadie to SFA proved a bit more challenging, though. I want to be clear from watching this one live, this never ever looked like a match that the Cougars would lose or even concede a goal. And I would estimate conservatively the Cougars had 80 to 85% of the total possession. The game was spent almost entirely in SFA's part of the field, regardless of half. I mean, it's one of those things where I looked at the 27-5 shot margin and it wasn't like we had 27 shots. It was like, wow, I don't even remember SFA having 5 shots in this one. And none of them, I think, especially challenged Lexi Gonzalez in goal. We'll say the Cougars had a couple of about the best chances you could possibly have that they couldn't convert on. A penalty that was called correctly on an SFA handball in the 78th minute that Cameron Maddox, your leading scorer, just unfortunately didn't put on target. And you had a near point-blank miss in front of the goal by, I believe, Samira Minor off a rebound in the 87th minute. I don't know the ins and outs of the soccer advanced stat expected goals, which is commonly called XG. I would imagine those 2 chances would be rated as near certain goals, and unfortunately, you couldn't convert either. And despite outshooting the Lady Jacks 27-5 for the match, ultimately, this one was a 0-0 draw.
Yeah, I really wanted to get the win there, especially for Coach Williams going back to SFA. Sure, there was probably a little bit of an edge to playing your old coach and playing your old teammates that were there. So, yeah, you'd like to see those put on goal. But something weird that you pointed out to me is that we don't have a goal in any away games. Not a huge, soccer guy, I watch it and that kind of stuff. And I can understand why in, the European leagues, why you would score less on the road. Any idea why this would happen in women's college soccer?
I mean, I will say UTSA has proven since UTSA has conceded twice in 6 matches to start the season.
Yeah.
They're whatever they end up being this season, I don't think they'll be anything other. They lost to TCU, but TCU didn't get a breakthrough until the 85th minute, and TCU's a top 10, top 15 kind of team. So I think I agree with you also. It is notable to me that you've played 180 minutes of soccer and haven't broken through on the road. It can't be anything but notable. I will say in UTSA's case, I mean, I think that's just a really good defensive team and you're playing in week 1. But also, I don't disagree with you that it is something worth noting from this game. Can I be a little shitty? Weird. Can I be a little shitty, not directed at the Cougars or Cougar coaches for a moment, Bobby?
Yeah.
We'll leave this by saying, ultimately, the Cougars can't look at anyone but themselves for why they couldn't break through and get the 1 goal they needed to end the draw and win this match. And I mentioned earlier, 2 absolutely golden opportunities that you didn't convert on those. You can't really feel like you were hard done not getting the win here. But SFA had an unbelievably cynical game plan. Bobby, they blatantly were not trying to win this match. And I understand psychologically getting some positive result, I guess, is better than a loss. But this isn't like professional soccer or even a college conference match where the standings are determined by, the typical points, the 3 you get for a win or the 1 for a draw. I mean, I'm not saying SFA should ever have played an aggressive game plan against a Big 12 opponent who's had a better season than them so far, but SFA had more yellow cards for time wasting 1 than they did corners, 0, which tells you how many serious attacking moves they tried to make. I'm not sure what you get as a college soccer program from a draw in SFA's position, because that's not a team that's making the NCAA tournament for any situation other than winning their conference tournament. It's not like, you get a resume bump from 0-0 draws with A&M and U of H, which they did this week, though I even gave a glance at the A&M box score. It seems like they didn't really do much attacking wise there either. And it's not really my concern, but from the broadcast, it looks like they had a good crowd. They had the pep band out there on hand and Nacogdoches for the game. I don't know, man. couldn't hurt you to try to do more to actually win the soccer game. You had a lot of fans out there, people who devoted 2.5, 3 hours of their night to watch you play, and you just sat back and played for a 0-0 tie or 0-0 draw, excuse me. And again, U of H had chances to win this game and didn't take them. It's not nothing that you've been goalless in 2 road games this season, which we've both noted here, though I don't think either of us are still in any way negative on what we've seen in the early season for Cougar soccer. We'll quickly note U of H will close their non-conference schedule on Thursday, the one game in the coming week. Back in Houston, they'll be hosting UTRGV, who is 3-3 in the young season, but their only D1 win in the 3 came against Prairie View. Definitely in the category of the should be a Cougar win by several goals kind of game.
Yep, absolutely.
Bobby, we're very deep into this, but we had our first golf event of the athletics year, and I'll let you talk about it because it sounds like it was quite a good one for the Cougs.
Yeah, the Cougs traveled to Louisiana. Showdown?
I tried it. I have nothing for it. I know it was hosted by La Tech, so I think it's up in the top of the state, I think.
Yeah, so it's Child Rant.
Showdown, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But they traveled to Louisiana. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying this isn't like the strongest tournament in the world, right? You are probably the most well-funded golf program here, but it was a tournament nonetheless, and you want to win every one that you go out for. Cougs place first by 6 strokes, go an absolutely insane 23 under in the third and final round to take that top spot. And then you had Hudson Weibel, which, did you know, and like I feel like I saw this before. Did you know his uncle is like Fran Fraschilla?
I know he didn't he start his college career at Oklahoma, which Fran Fraschilla is pretty
I'm not
pretty
sure
deeply
about
connected.
that,
I think so.
But yeah. Fran is like his uncle. I saw a tweet from.
Well, I won't hold it against him.
Yeah, I saw a tweet from Fran Fraschilla that was like, "Congrats to my nephew Hudson Weibel and University of Houston Cougar men's golf." I was like, "The hell?" Yeah. So anyways,
thank you, Fran Fraschilla.
Hudson Weibel shoots 6 under today, goes to a playoff, and if you haven't seen it, he is about 120 yards out, hits a second shot, drains it for the eagle. He wins in a walk-off 120-yard shot to win the tournament. Just an amazing moment. You actually see, I think they said it was Grant Doggett who recorded it. And you hear Grant, you see the ball hit, and you see Grant like, oh, that's going to be good. Oh, get in. And then you hear it hit the flag stick, and then everyone goes crazy. It's a really cool video. The golf program posted the tweet. I'm sure I can find it and retweet it from the Scott and Holman account as well.
I believe I did.
Did you already
I could be wrong. I think I did.
I will check it. I believe you did that. So yeah, really cool moment there. Anytime you go out, we're going to celebrate Cougar wins. We celebrated cross country last year. Does this mean that they're going to win the Big 12 title and place second at nationals? No, but anytime you go out and you win, it's deserving of a mention on the pod.
Yeah, it's an absolute crazy shot. One that you should. It is criminal. This post only has 21 likes. Go to our page. We retweeted it. It's fantastic. It's one of the better golf shots you'll see in a long time. Great stuff from Hudson.
Yeah.
All right, Bobby. We're an hour and 30 something minutes into this. We knew this would be a beefy episode. I've taken enough for your evening. Take us home, buddy.
All right. Well, that is it for us. We appreciate you guys listening so much. If you have any feedback for us, you can find us on social media, as we just mentioned, at SH Podcast on Twitter. You can find us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social. You can also, if you don't want to do social media, more power to you. Totally get it. It can be a toxic waste pool sometimes. You can email us and find us at shpodcast@gmail.com. If you really want to jump to the front of the line in terms of us paying attention to your feedback, you can go to patreon.com/shpodcast. For $5 a month, you get our instant reacts as well as other things that we just kind of sit around and talk about and come up with ideas. It could be anything from watching film to complete roster breakdowns. We've done both. So we love talking Cougs. For $5 a month, you can get that extra a little bit. If you want to pay for our subscription to a all 22 service, we'll take that as well. Also, just a friendly little shout out to our network partners, 1012 podcast. I went back and listened this week to their Big 12 episode, or their like weekly Big 12 episode. Really good insights there. So yeah, go check them out as well. If you're interested in any of our Big 12 compadres, you can find them on there as well. So just a good resource there to learn all about the Big 12 and who we're playing this year. So just a shout out to 1012 Network and everything that we are a part of. So Sam, I think that's it. What do we always say, bud?
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs! Let's go!